Still doing this. It's still awful. And I'm still on vacation. Quickly recapping, I accidentally cured my anxiety, and I think you can too. So just as a reminder, I did not set out to change my whole life. I just wanted to distract myself, read a book, maybe prepare for entrepreneurship and first-time management. But there are a number of books that I've been sort of poring over in this transformational time period, and I don't know if it has contributed. I can only imagine that it has, at least some of it, and I think at the very least it's worth mentioning because these books basically shattered the facade of the life that I thought I wanted, or the life that I was willing to accept, and I just decided not to put it back together. Now, I mentioned in my very first video that this transformational journey sort of started in earnest like January 2023, right after my divorce. But there were a couple of other books and ideas that I sort of had been exposed to in the years leading up to that laid the groundwork for all of the bigger ideas that came more recently. So I definitely want to mention those first. So in 2013, I was 24 years old, smack in the middle of a full-blown quarter-life crisis because everyone around me was getting married and having kids. And I felt like I was somehow deficient because I didn't want to do any of that, and I just would prefer to, party and take trips to Europe. In fact, I had broken up with my boyfriend because he said he wanted to marry me, and I was like, no. At the time, I was like, I'm not a married type. That's a whole other story about why I ended up getting married, but in any case, I felt like there was something wrong with me, and I know that's so dumb. Please don't hate me. 24, whatever. In the year leading up to this, I had broken up with that boyfriend, and then I had to live with him for 6 months after we broke up. And also, during that time period, I got rejected from the school that I was just dying to go to, that I thought for sure I was a shoo-in, and I just was crushed. I was just crushed. So I was feeling particularly adrift, and that's when I came across, somebody probably posted it on Facebook or something, a TED Talk by Angela Duckworth on grit. And I think she ended up publishing a book by that name about the same topic, but at the time the book wasn't published yet, and this was just a TED Talk that I watched. And this was 12 years ago, but it really stuck with me. So it's all about how passion and perseverance actually matter more than intelligence and talent when it comes to measures of success. And honestly, I was already living it. I'm pretty smart, but I've always been a try again type person. I took the SATs twice, I took the LSAT twice, I took the bar twice. I ended up doing well on all of them. I'm someone who gets knocked down and always gets back up. I failed out of college the first time, and like I said, I got rejected from the school I wanted to go to the second time, but I ended up with 3 degrees that have served me really well professionally and in my private life. In law school, I got rejected from the law journal that I wanted to join, but I ended up getting published on my own initiative, which is 10,000 times cooler because nobody does that. As the great Chumbawamba says, "You're never gonna keep me down." That talk just sort of gave me the language for what I was already experiencing. I actually ended up giving my own talk basically on the same subject in 2018 to the students at my small town middle school, and it was so cool. And I would love to do that again because I just feel like this is the most important message that a kid can hear, honestly. So then the next year in 2014, I went on a trip to Costa Rica, and you need a good beach read, and I don't know who recommended it or how it found its way into my lap, but I took this book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life. It's about making sustainable changes through small actions, and it works. I started focusing on small wins instead of overwhelming overhauls. I started asking myself, are these changes that I want to make sustainable? I only looked at the step in front of me instead of getting overwhelmed by the whole staircase. And that shift was so crucial. Okay, so then in 2018, I read a book called The Cow in the Parking Lot. I talked about it at length in my last video, but it's about transforming your anger through mindfulness. And so that's when the first seed of an idea of controlling my own responses sort of was planted, and that'll come back around. Again, I mentioned all this a lot more in the last video, so highly recommend if you want more information on that. Okay, so now flash forward to January 2023, I see that girl's Facebook post, and the first book that I download or whatever on Audible is The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. And that book really marks like the before and after of the whole thing, because I mean, first of all, she's the one who initially, told me you can choose which thoughts you lean into, you can forgive yourself and try again, you can give yourself grace. She really sort of laid the beginning foundation of like, you don't have to be torturing yourself every day. I don't know why, I just like sort of assumed that I did, whatever. Freshly divorced, starting a business, like freaking out about everything, and then I started just like trusting a little bit, and it was not easy. I went in so skeptical, but you lean in a little bit and then you see results and it's easier to lean in more. And that was my first real step into trusting something bigger than myself instead of trying to control everything. So then in that book, Gabby mentions Esther and Jerry Hicks, Abraham Hicks, and a few of their books. So of course I picked up Ask and It Is Given, which is all about how to align yourself with what you do want instead of fighting against what you don't want. And for me, the real gem wasn't the manifestation part, it was the emotional guidance scale. It's such a practical tool, and I'm gonna make a whole video just about that. It's probably gonna be the next one. It was the first really practical tool that I had to start feeling better. So then from that same Facebook post from this law school acquaintance, I also got Dare to Lead from Brene Brown. That was so crucial too, because I just had no idea what kind of management style I wanted to have. Like, how do you know if you've never managed even one person before? I never even saw myself in management, really. I really never saw myself starting a business. Kind of freaking out because I didn't know what kind of leader I wanted to be, but I wanted to be true to myself, act in alignment with my values, all that. So this book showed me that vulnerability and courage go hand in hand. And it sort of gave me a leadership style to strive for. Not to say that I, got it perfect on day one or that I'm even perfect at it now, but it was so much easier and less daunting than going in blind, just figuring it out as I go. I could not be more proud of how far I've come, and I'm so confident in my abilities at this point. And at the same time, I'm prepared to fuck up and I give myself grace just like on anything else. Then I read another book from that girl's post called The Audacity to Be Queen. This one really helped me with my self-worth, which in general, I have had a good sense of self-worth, but after my divorce, he just was so mean. He would say things like, you're a terrible lawyer, you're not gonna make any money, things that objectively I knew not to be true. It gets to you, dude. You let someone talk to you like that for 6 years, it will start to wear on you. It will start to make you feel like maybe I don't deserve to take up space. But this book really gave me the permission to speak my truth, step into my own vision, and live more authentically in a way that reinvigorated my self-worth, like I said, and also my drive to build a better life for myself at whatever it cost. So then I read a book called Judgment Detox, which is another Gabrielle Bernstein book. It just helped me sort of release the judgments that I had about other people and myself, which usually are overlapping in some ways. It's a very interesting read, so that I could move forward lighter. And it also ended up leading towards me having an easier time of forgiving the people around me, because I started to sort of see everyone as actually really doing their best with severe, very human limitations, emotional and practical, logical, reasonable limitations. And then it was kind of I don't mean it in a shitty way, like a southern shitty way, bless her heart, but they're trying their best, and if that's not good enough, what can we do, I definitely think that forgiveness is another idea that's large enough for its own video, so we'll definitely come back to that. I think that has been huge as well. I want to make another honorable mention for something that wasn't quite a book, but I did listen to it on Audible. The recordings of Pema chödrön's retreats. Like I said, not exactly books, but I did listen to them on Audible. Things like Fail, Fail Again, Fail Better, and Walking the Walk. There were a bunch of them though. I recommend all of them. She's helped me get more comfortable with the idea of death, narrow down what I think I might believe about death, or what, just sort of has broadened my perspective when it comes to that stuff. I mean, I feel like now that I'm so, I don't want to say comfortable with death, but I'm not troubled by it in the way most people are because of her. And maybe that makes some people uncomfortable, but it really has given me a lot of freedom. Basically, she emphasizes, mindfulness, compassion, embracing uncertainty. That's the big one. And she was sort of like a companion in that time, helping me sit with my own discomfort, which is crucial because historically I would run from it like most people do. And again, that's something else that I talked about at length in my last video. It was the first time I was really exposed to the idea of detachment and the possibility that maybe I'm causing all my suffering by being overly, I don't know, maybe addicted is the right word, to the people and things that I have in my life right now, instead of just appreciating that most of the things in this life are beautiful because they are fleeting, and just appreciating them for the fact that I have them right now. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but grief is the price we pay for love. So then Pema chödrön also mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh, wrote a book called No Mud, No Lotus, which I had heard of like years before in law school, but when the name came up again, it just seemed like a sort of another weird callback. And it reminded me that sadness isn't something to be like avoided at all costs. It's sort of required to experience happiness. It actually makes happiness possible. Okay, so then the next book in the series would be probably Wayne Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. Which, I mean, the title already, I was on board with that whole concept itself. But I had read a few of his books already before this, but he was another person that was mentioned a lot by Gabrielle Bernstein in her books, and sort of just inspired me to check him out a little more too. This one is his interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, living in the flow of life, living as water. I really took it so hard, like so much to heart. Like it really affected me. And it helped me align with flow instead of always, trying to swim upstream and trying to control everything. It was just another reminder of how important detachment and surrender are in this whole journey. Because water doesn't demand its own way. Water simply flows. It nourishes by its very nature, not because it's trying to be nourishing. And after reading that book, I actually changed how I live my everyday life. Definitely gonna need another video specifically about that. I refer to it as flowing. I don't think I can ever go back to living the way that I used to. Just for example, I haven't set an alarm in 2 years. It's just not how I want to live my life anymore, and I have sort of set it up. And I know that that's maybe not a realistic expectation for everybody day one, but if that's the kind of life you want, it's not out of the question to set that up for yourself. And to some degree, I do understand. I don't have kids. I have a lot of privilege when it comes to that sense, but there are ways to adjust how you're living to make it more aligned with flow and less, white knuckling. Okay, so then when 8 Rules of Love came out, I was already in the Audible, app a lot, and so it was being promoted, advertised a lot, and so I was like, all right, I'll check it out. I was dating for the first time in 6 years. It was very weird, and I really enjoyed it. It starts with how to love yourself, which we all know is the basis of any healthier relationship, and then it builds outward from there. It gave me both practical and spiritual tools for love. And I enjoyed it so much that I immediately picked up another one of his books called Think Like a Monk. Now that one gave me a more general sort of framework for daily life. Mindfulness, focus, gratitude, finding purpose in ordinary things. And I started to look for more ways to be of service. Just for instance, there was a couple months where I was really just in my own problems, right? Just in my ego and just in my God, so many things to deal with. And I realized God, I'm really thinking about myself a lot. Maybe I should just find a service project while this other shit just kind of works itself out. And it has always worked. One of the things I did was anybody hear that story about how women started putting $100 bills into boxes of diapers and baby formula, and then it was oh, you shouldn't have. Oh yeah, it was a Facebook post where this woman had seen a purse got left behind, that like clearly the mom couldn't afford the purse and the diapers, and so she put the purse down and she bought the diapers. And then like another woman had seen it and she was like, that's heartbreaking, you shouldn't have to choose between the purse that you want for yourself and just simply like providing nourishment for your children. And then I heard, true to form, then just go and fuck it up. No, I'm not a misandrist. I promise. I started seeing all these pictures of like diaper aisles just like destroyed from men like taking in these boxes looking for money and then just leaving the trap. Like what? Like I'm incensed at that still, honestly. Like the fact that that even like seems like an okay thing to do like really upsets me. And it upset me at the time. At the same time that that was going on, I was getting rid of a lot of like Poshmark boutique jewelry that I had been selling in the past, but like it just ended up being more work than I wanted to put in because now I have this whole other business. And so I wasn't sure what to do with them, and I was gonna just donate them because they're cute stuff, you know. But I ended up just putting them into like little, you know, like wedding favor bags and like a little note, like if you found this, it's for you. Keep it, know that like somebody wants you to have a good day. And I went around to like Walmarts and Dollar Generals like all over my town and hid them in the diapers and in the baby formula. It was honestly so nerve-wracking because I thought like people are gonna think I'm stealing. Nothing ever happened, and I would just hope that if I could just sort of like, no, I'm putting stuff in here, I feel like it would be, you know, but that's anxiety for you. So anyway, that was a long tangent, my bad. So yeah, I try to put the tenets of that book into practice every single day now. When I read Atomic Habits, which was the next book in the sort of series, it started building on the concepts that I had read in Costa Rica in that One Small Step Can Change Your Life book. But this one had more of a scientific lens, which I really appreciated. And I feel like that scientific aspect of the books from this point forward were so crucial for me because so much up until this point has been about, you know, frequency and energy and like just real, you know, not super grounded ideas. And I needed some sort of practical grounding for all this stuff to feel real and make sense to me. This was the first book that had that sort of scientific lens. Because historically, I'm not a religious gal. I always say nowadays that I'm finding God through hard science, but I am such a skeptic, or I was, I guess, such a skeptic. It's hard to talk about it because it's like, am I spiritual? Or do I just believe in quantum physics? I don't know. It's very confusing, and I'm just sort of trying to figure out what I believe, you know? This book says that habits aren't just willpower. They're systems that you design to set yourself up for success. And that clicked for me in a whole new way because now I'm like, okay, are the changes I want to make sustainable? I've been asking myself that for, you know, 10 years at that point. But now I'm also asking, how can I go about this in the smartest way? And how can I use like neuroscience and psychology and blah, 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 and, you know, all the grounded science to, again, set myself up for success. So now I'm making intentional choices to make sustainable changes, and ultimately I'm more successful as a result. And when I'm not, I just fall back into giving myself grace because I am also doing my best with my very, you know, human limitations. So if I ever do slip back into like being disappointed with myself over some kind of performance or productivity or what have you, I'll basically just ask myself like, hey, did you do your best? And usually the answer is yes, almost always, but you know, not always, but almost always the answer is yes. And so then I'll basically say like, okay, so what more do you want from yourself then? And I have yet to find a good answer for that. So then more recently, I read The Art of Letting Go, which I also talked about more at length in the last video. And that book pulled me back to the whole central lesson of all of this, which is, you know, freedom comes from release. Stop trying to control. That's basically the essence of like all of these books. And so right now I'm in the middle of reading Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is incredible. And like I had heard his name a bunch like over these 2 years, and you know, I didn't feel inspired to look it up, and for whatever reason this was the time. It's all about how your thoughts influence your biology and your reality, and they shape your future. And it feels like the next level of everything that I've been reading up until this point, but with a very heavy scientific underpinning to the point where it's like almost too heavy science for me sometimes. But I love that because like I said, like it's so, lofty, a lot of this stuff, and it feels good to be like firmly rooted in some sense. So now I'm just thinking about not just changing the way that I think, but kind of changing the way that I am, like on a deeper energetic level. But like I said, the science backing is thick, sometimes too thick, which again just makes the whole thing feel more grounded and possible. So like I said, I didn't set out to change my whole personality, but that is basically what happened. I set out to read a book to distract myself from my pain, which is ironic, right? Because now I would never. And to, prepare for the first time business ownership and all the, elements of that. Like rebuilding my life after divorce, that's daunting. I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to read and like do some gardening and whatever. And this is what happened. Little by little, my old life didn't fit anymore. So I just started from scratch. And now I'm living a life that actually feels like mine. And it's beautiful. Like, okay, so perhaps this needs like a trigger warning. I know this is the end. That's not how trigger warnings work, but some of these books do get pretty woo. Like I said, they're about energy, it's about frequency, it's about, some of them are about manifestation. So some of these books do get pretty woo-woo, but that's fine. You don't have to agree with or buy into everything that I'm saying here, or everything in these books. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Like I really actually want you to do that. So thanks for hearing me out. I'm looking forward to sharing more of, everything that I've learned. Let me know what's working. I'm happy to help strategize specifics if it would be helpful. No life here. All right, okay, thanks, bye. Excuse me. Oh, bless you. So I don't know if anyone wants to hear about any more of my failures, but feel free to ask any questions.